The crunch of metal against metal tore through the peaceful autumn air as Thomas Miller slammed on his brakes, watching in horror as the sleek silver sports car ahead of him veered off the road and collided with a massive oak tree. Without hesitation, he threw his truck into park on the shoulder, adrenaline pumping through his veins. "Emma, stay here. Don't get out of the truck," he ordered his 8-year-old daughter, who stared wide-eyed from the passenger seat. "Lock the doors. I'm going to help." "But Dad, no buts, sweetheart. I'll be right back." Thomas was already moving, running toward the smoking wreckage, his heart hammering in his chest. The sports car, a McLaren, he realized distantly, was crumpled against the tree, airbags deployed, the driver's side door crushed inward. Through the shattered window, he could see a woman slumped over the steering wheel, her honey blonde hair splayed across the deflating airbag. She wasn't moving. "Hey, can you hear me?" Thomas called, approaching the vehicle cautiously. When no response came, he tried the passenger door. It was locked. The smell of gasoline permeated the air, making his stomach clench with urgency. He pulled off his flannel jacket, wrapped it around his fist, and broke the passenger window. Glass rained down as he reached in to unlock the door, yanking it open with all his strength. The woman remained motionless, her face obscured by her hair and the airbag. Thomas carefully climbed in, the smell of expensive leather and perfume mixing with the acrid scent of burnt rubber. He pressed his fingers against her neck, relieved to feel a pulse. "Madam, can you hear me?" he said loudly, assessing the situation. She was breathing, but a thin trickle of blood ran down her temple. The dashboard was crushed inward, pinning her legs. The car creaked ominously, and Thomas caught sight of flames beginning to lick at the undercarriage. Time was running out. "I'm going to get you out of here," he said firmly, reaching across to unbuckle her seatbelt. He slid one arm under her knees and the other around her shoulders, surprised at how light she felt despite her height. With a grunt of exertion, he pulled her free of the wreckage, careful not to jostle her too much in case of spinal injuries. He had barely cleared the vehicle when a whoosh of flames engulfed the engine compartment. Thomas ran, the unconscious woman cradled against his chest, his lungs burning as he sprinted away from the car. The heat of the explosion pushed at his back as the gas tank ignited, but he didn't stop until he reached the safe distance of his truck. Emma had disobeyed his instructions and was standing outside the vehicle, her face pale with fear. "Dad, is she okay?" "I don't know, honey. Get back in the truck and grab my phone from the console," Thomas instructed, carefully laying the woman down on the grass beside the road. He checked her pulse again, still steady, and gently brushed the hair from her face. His breath caught in his throat. Even with a smudge of soot and the small cut on her forehead, she was stunningly beautiful. She looked to be in her early 30s, with high cheekbones, full lips, and long lashes that cast shadows on her cheeks. Emmer returned with his phone, and Thomas quickly dialed 911, reporting the accident while keeping his fingers pressed to the woman's wrist, monitoring her heartbeat. "Stay with me," he murmured, more to himself than to the unconscious woman. "Help is coming." As if hearing his words, her eyelids fluttered and she moaned softly. Slowly, her eyes opened, revealing irises the color of warm honey. She blinked in confusion, her gaze unfocused. "What happened?" Her voice was raspy but cultured, with a slight accent Thomas couldn't place. "You were in an accident. Your car hit a tree and caught fire," Thomas explained, keeping his tone calm and reassuring. "Try not to move. The ambulance is on its way." She winced, trying to sit up anyway. "My bag." "My phone." "Everything's gone. The car exploded," Thomas said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder to keep her still. "I'm Thomas. This is my daughter, Emma." The woman stared at them both, her expression dazed. "Harper," she said finally. "Harper Kensington." Emma knelt beside them, her face solemn. "Dad pulled you out of the car. He's really strong. He lifts heavy things at work all the time." A faint smile touched Harper's lips before pain clouded her features again. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes locking with Thomas's. "You saved my life." Thomas felt heat rise to his cheeks. Anyone would have done the same. No, Harper said with surprising firmness. They wouldn't have. The distant wail of sirens interrupted them, and Thomas felt a strange reluctance as the emergency vehicles approached. For a brief moment, those honey-colored eyes had held his, and he'd felt something a connection that made no sense given the circumstances. The paramedics took over quickly, loading Harper onto a stretcher while peppering her with questions. Thomas provided what information he could about the accident, watching as they secured a cervical collar around her neck and checked her vitals. "Sir, are you related to the patient?" one of the EMTs asked Thomas. "No, I just happened to be driving by when the accident occurred." "Dad saved her," Emma interjected proudly. The paramedic nodded. "You did good work. We'll take it from here." As they prepared to load Harper into the ambulance, she suddenly reached out, her fingers grasping weakly at the air. "Thomas," she called, her voice strained. "Thomas Miller." He stepped forward, surprised she'd remembered his full name, though he couldn't recall giving it. "Please," she said. "I don't know anyone here. Could you? Would you come to the hospital? Just so I'm not alone when they're done with tests." Thomas hesitated, glancing at Emma, who was bouncing on her toes with excitement. "We can go, Dad. Please, I want to know if she's okay too," the paramedic interrupted. "Sir, we're heading to Memorial Hospital. You can follow if you'd like, but we need to get moving." Thomas made a split-second decision. "We'll meet you there," he promised Harper, whose relief was visible even through her pain. As the ambulance pulled away, Thomas guided Emma back to their truck. "Buckle up, kiddo. Looks like our trip to the hardware store will have to wait." "That's okay," Emma said, fastening her seatbelt. The lady was pretty, and she seemed nice. Thomas smiled as he started the engine. Yes, she did. The drive to Memorial Hospital gave Thomas time to process what had just happened. He'd been on his way to pick up supplies for a small bathroom renovation job, one of several side gigs he'd taken on to make ends meet since Melissa had left them 3 years ago. Money was perpetually tight, especially with the cost of Emma's dance lessons and the rent on their modest 2-bedroom apartment. And now here he was, driving to check on a complete stranger who'd crashed what had to be a $250,000 car. She obviously came from money: her clothes, her jewelry, even the way she spoke suggested wealth and privilege. Worlds apart from his blue-collar existence. Yet something about those honey-colored eyes and the vulnerability in her voice when she'd asked him to come to the hospital had tugged at him in a way he couldn't explain. At the hospital, they were directed to the emergency department waiting room. An hour passed before a nurse approached them. "Mr. Miller, Miss Kensington is asking for you. She's been cleared for visitors, no serious injuries, thankfully. Just some bruising, a mild concussion, and a sprained ankle." Thomas stood, taking Emma's hand. "That's great news." "Dad, I'm bored," Emma whispered as they followed the nurse. "Can I play on your phone?" Thomas handed over his phone with the gaming apps, knowing it would keep her occupied. Harper was propped up in a hospital bed, her blonde hair now pulled back in a loose ponytail. The cut on her forehead had been cleaned and butterfly bandaged, and an Roman 4 ran into her arm. Despite the hospital gown and clinical surroundings, she still managed to look elegant. Her face brightened when she saw them. "You came," she said, sounding genuinely surprised and pleased. "Of course," Thomas replied, guiding Emma to a chair where she promptly became absorbed in her game. "How are you feeling?" "Like I was in a car accident," Harper said with a wry smile. "But apparently I'm very lucky. No broken bones, just a concussion in this." She gestured to her ankle, which was wrapped in an elastic bandage. "The doctor says I should take it easy for a few days." Thomas nodded, suddenly feeling awkward. Now that the emergency was over, he wasn't sure what his role was supposed to be. Harper seemed to sense his discomfort. "I've imposed on you enough," she said softly. I wanted to thank you properly, and I realize I have a problem." She paused, looking embarrassed. "I lost everything in the car, my purse, phone, ID, everything. The hospital is discharging me soon, but I have nowhere to go and no way to get there." Thomas frowned. Don't you have someone you can call? Family? Friends? Harper shook her head. I just moved here 2 weeks ago. I don't know anyone except my assistant, and she's out of the country for her sister's wedding. She hesitated. I hate to ask, but could you possibly give me a ride to my house? I can pay you back once I get inside and access my safe. Before Thomas could respond, a doctor entered the room, clipboard in hand. Miss Kensington, you're free to go. I've written you a prescription for pain medication and included instructions for concussion monitoring. He handed her a sheet of paper. Do you have someone to stay with you for the next 24 hours? With a concussion, you shouldn't be alone. Harper's face fell. No, I don't, the doctor frowned. I'd really prefer not to discharge you if you'll be alone. Concussions can be unpredictable. Thomas found himself speaking before he'd fully thought it through. She won't be alone, I'll stay with her. Both Harper and the doctor looked at him with surprise. Dad. Emma had looked up from her game, curious about the change in his tone. Thomas cleared his throat. I mean, if that's okay with you, Harper. We could take you home, make sure you're settled, and I can check on you periodically. Or, he hesitated, then plunged ahead. You could stay at our place tonight. It's not fancy, but we have a comfortable couch, and that way I can keep an eye on you like the doctor recommends. Harper's eyes widened. I couldn't impose like that. It's not an imposition. You shouldn't be alone after what you've been through. The doctor nodded approvingly. That sounds like a good plan. I'll get your discharge papers ready. After the doctor left, Harper studied Thomas with an unreadable expression. Why would you do that for me? You don't even know me. Thomas shrugged, feeling self-conscious under her scrutiny. It's the right thing to do. And honestly, Emma and I are pretty good company, aren't we, kiddo? Emma nodded enthusiastically. We have ice cream at home, and Dad makes really good pancakes for breakfast. Harper's expression softened as she looked at Emma. Pancakes do sound nice. An hour later, they were heading to Thomas's apartment. Harper in the passenger seat wearing hospital-issued scrubs, since her clothes had been ruined in the accident. She'd given Thomas her address, a luxury apartment building downtown that he'd driven past, but never entered, but had agreed to his offer of staying the night at his place after seeing the concern on his face when she admitted she lived alone. I'm sorry about this, Harper said quietly as they drove. You must have had plans today that didn't involve rescuing strange women and taking them home. Thomas chuckled. Just the hardware store and fixing a leaky shower. Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow. You fix things? Harper asked, seeming genuinely interested. I'm a contractor by trade, but I do a lot of handyman work on the side. He glanced in the rearview mirror at Emma, who had fallen asleep. Single dad life means taking whatever jobs I can get, Harper nodded thoughtfully. Emma's mother left 3 years ago. Decided family life wasn't for her after all. Thomas kept his voice neutral, mindful of his sleeping daughter. It's just been Emma and me since then. She seems like a wonderful girl. She's the best thing in my life, Thomas said simply. When they arrived at the apartment, Thomas carried a still sleeping Emma inside while Harper followed, limping slightly on her sprained ankle. He settled Emma in her bedroom before showing Harper around the modest 2-bedroom unit. It's not much, he said apologetically, acutely aware of the worn furniture and outdated kitchen. It's lovely, Harper said, and something in her tone made him believe she meant it. It feels like a home. Thomas helped her get settled on the couch with pillows and a blanket, then brought her a glass of water and the pain medication the hospital had provided. Thank you, she said, taking the pills. For everything. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come along. Let's not think about that, Thomas replied, sitting in the armchair across from her. So you said you just moved here. From where? London, most recently, but I've lived all over. Harper sipped her water. My work involves a lot of travel. What do you do? A shadow passed over her face. I'm in business. Investments, mainly. Before Thomas could ask more, Emma padded into the living room, rubbing her eyes. Dad, I'm hungry. Sorry about our interrupted lunch, Thomas said, standing. How about I make us all some sandwiches? The rest of the day passed in a surprisingly comfortable routine. They ate lunch, watched a movie that Emma selected, and then Thomas prepared a simple dinner of spaghetti and garlic bread. Harper insisted on helping despite her sprained ankle, setting the table while Thomas cooked. Throughout the evening, Thomas couldn't help noticing little things about Harper. The way she listened intently when Emma spoke about school, how she unconsciously tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the quiet grace with which she moved despite her injury. After dinner, while Emma took her bath, Harper helped Thomas with the dishes. "You're very good with her," Harper observed, handing him a plate to dry. "I've had to be both mom and dad. It hasn't always been easy, but we manage." Thomas placed the dry plate in the cabinet. "What about you?" "Any kids?" Harper shook her head, a flicker of sadness in her eyes. "No, my career has always come first. Sometimes I wonder if I've made the right choices." "It's never too late to change direction," Thomas said softly. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither spoke. Thomas felt that same inexplicable connection he'd experienced by the roadside, stronger now in the quiet intimacy of his kitchen. The moment was broken by Emma calling from the bathroom, needing help with her hair. The rest of the evening passed in quiet conversation, and by the time Emma went to bed, Harper was clearly exhausted from her ordeal. "You should get some rest," Thomas told her, helping her arrange pillows on the couch. "I'll be right down the hall if you need anything during the night." "Doctor's orders are to wake you every few hours to check on that concussion." Harper nodded, settling into the makeshift bed. "I don't know how to thank you, Thomas." "No thanks necessary," he replied. "Sweet dreams, Harper." Throughout the night, Thomas dutifully woke Harper every 3 hours, asking her simple questions to ensure her concussion wasn't worsening. Each time, she answered coherently, though with increasing amusement at his concern. "You're taking your nursing duties very seriously," she teased during the 3 a.m. check. "I take all my duties seriously," he replied with a smile, watching as she drifted back to sleep. In the morning, Thomas woke early as usual to prepare for the day. He found Harper already awake, sitting on the couch with her knees drawn up, staring pensively out the window at the dawn sky. "How are you feeling?" he asked, keeping his voice low to avoid waking Emma. Harper turned, offering him a small smile. "Better, much better, actually." She hesitated, then added, "But I think I should go home today. I've imposed enough." Thomas felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. "You're not imposing, but I understand if you want to get back to your own place." He made coffee, and they sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "I'd like to take you and Emma to dinner," Harper said suddenly. "As a thank you, whenever it's convenient for you." Thomas started to decline. Automatically accepting charity wasn't his style, but something in Harper's expression stopped him. This wasn't charity, it was genuine gratitude. "We'd like that," he said instead. Emma woke soon after, delighted to find Harper still there, and even more excited when Thomas announced they would be taking her home after breakfast. To Emma, the prospect of seeing where this interesting new friend lived was an adventure. After pancakes, which Harper praised enthusiastically, they drove to the downtown address she'd provided. The luxury high-rise was even more impressive up close, with a uniformed doorman and marble-floored lobby. "Miss Kensington," the doorman looked shocked as they approached. "We've been so worried." "Your assistant called from overseas when she couldn't reach you." "I was in an accident, Philip," Harper explained. "These kind people rescued me." Philip's eyes widened as he took in Thomas's work jeans and Emma's casual clothes. "I'll inform building security right away." "They've been looking for you since yesterday." Thomas felt increasingly out of place as they rode the elevator to the penthouse level. Harper seemed to notice his discomfort and squeezed his arm reassuringly. "Almost there," she said softly. The elevator opened directly into a massive foyer. Emma gasped audibly as they stepped into what had to be a 5,000-square-foot luxury apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "You live here?" Emma whispered in awe. Harper nodded, suddenly seeming self-conscious. It's a bit much for one person, I know. Thomas took in the minimalist but obviously expensive furnishings, the state-of-the-art kitchen, the artwork that even his untrained eye could tell was valuable. This wasn't just money, this was serious wealth. Let me get you some comfortable clothes, Harper said, limping toward what must have been the bedroom. And I need to make some calls to replace my ID and credit cards. When she returned in yoga pants and a simple t-shirt, looking far more relaxed, she handed Thomas an envelope. What's this? He asked, not opening it, just a small token of my appreciation. Thomas shook his head, handing it back. I can't accept that. I didn't help you for money. Harper looked startled, then thoughtful. I know you didn't. That's refreshing. She took the envelope back. How about that dinner instead? Tonight, perhaps? Before Thomas could answer, his phone rang. It was a client expecting him for a job that afternoon, one he couldn't afford to reschedule. I have to work, he said apologetically after ending the call. Rain, check on dinner. Harper nodded, looking disappointed but understanding. Of course. They exchanged phone numbers, Thomas entering Harper's landline into his contacts since her mobile had been destroyed in the crash. I'll call you, he promised, feeling strangely reluctant to leave. Emma hugged Harper goodbye, extracting a promise that they would see her again soon. As they rode the elevator down, Emma looked up at Thomas with a knowing smile that seemed too wise for her 8 years. She's nice, Dad, and pretty. I think she likes you. Thomas ruffled her hair affectionately. She's just grateful we helped her, kiddo. But as they drove away, Thomas couldn't help glancing back at the gleaming tower, wondering about the woman in the penthouse, and why, despite the obvious differences in their lives, he felt so drawn to her. The next few days passed in a blur of work for Thomas. A small bathroom renovation turned into a larger project when the client discovered water damage behind the walls. He worked late into the evenings, grateful for the extra income, but finding his thoughts drifting frequently to Harper. On Wednesday evening, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Thomas, it's Harper, I got a new phone. Her voice sent an unexpected thrill through him. Harper, hi, how are you feeling? Much better. The headaches are gone and my ankle is healing nicely. She paused. I was wondering if that dinner invitation could be for Friday, unless you're busy, of course. Thomas smiled, grateful she couldn't see the way his face lit up. Friday would be great. Emma will be excited. Wonderful. I've made reservations at Riverview for 7. Is that okay? Thomas hesitated. Riverview was one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, the kind of place where the menu didn't list prices, because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. Actually, Harper continued, seeming to sense his hesitation, would you mind if I came to your place instead? I could bring takeout. After everything that happened, I'd prefer somewhere comfortable. The tension in Thomas's shoulders eased. That sounds perfect. Friday arrived, and Thomas found himself uncharacteristically nervous as he tidied the apartment. Emma watched his preparations with amusement. Dad, are you wearing cologne? Thomas felt his cheeks warm. Maybe it's not a big deal, Emma grinned. Is this a date? No, it's just dinner with a friend to thank us for helping her. If you say so, Emma replied, clearly unconvinced. When Harper arrived, she was carrying several bags of takeout from a popular Italian restaurant. She looked stunning in simple jeans and a cashmere sweater, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders. I hope you like Italian, she said, handing the bags to Thomas. I got a bit of everything since I wasn't sure what you'd prefer. Dinner was relaxed and enjoyable. Emma dominated the conversation, peppering Harper with questions about her travels and life. Harper answered with genuine interest, never talking down to the girl or dismissing her curiosity. After dinner, Emma reluctantly went to her room to finish homework, leaving Thomas and Harper alone with glasses of wine. She's remarkable, Harper said, watching Emma go. So bright and curious. She's my whole world, Thomas replied simply. Harper studied him over the rim of her glass. You're a good father, that's clear from how she looks at you. Thomas felt warmth spread through his chest at her words. I try, it's not always easy, but it's worth it. Tell me about your work, Harper said, curling her legs beneath her on the couch. How did you become a contractor? Thomas explained how he'd started as a carpenter's apprentice right out of high school, working his way up through the trades until he could start his own small contracting business. He described the satisfaction of working with his hands, of seeing tangible results from his labor. I admire that, Harper said when he finished, creating something real and lasting. What about you? Thomas asked. You mentioned investments, but what do you actually do? For the first time, Harper seemed uncomfortable. It's complicated. I run a company that my father built. We invest in sustainable technology primarily. That sounds interesting, Thomas prompted when she didn't elaborate. Harper sighed, setting down her wine glass. The truth is, Thomas, my family's company is Kensington Global. We're one of the largest private investment firms in the world. Thomas blinked, the name registering vaguely from business news. So you're wealthy, yes, Harper met his eyes directly. I didn't mention it before because people tend to treat me differently once they know. And after you rescued me, after how kind you and Emma were when you had no idea who I was, I didn't want that to change. Thomas absorbed this information, several things now making sense: the expensive car, the penthouse, her cultured accent. Does it bother you? Harper asked quietly, vulnerability evident in her voice. Thomas considered the question seriously. No, he said finally. It doesn't change who you are as a person, and I like the person I've gotten to know. Relief flooded Harper's face. I like you too, Thomas, more than I expected to. The admission hung between them, charged with possibility. Thomas found himself moving closer to her on the couch, drawn by the warmth in her honey-colored eyes. I should probably go, Harper whispered, though she made no move to leave. Probably, Thomas agreed, even as he reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch seemed to break a dam. Harper leaned forward, and Thomas met her halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that felt both inevitable and surprising. Her mouth was soft, tasting faintly of wine, and Thomas felt his heart race as she responded eagerly, her hand coming up to cup his cheek. When they broke apart, both slightly breathless, Harper rested her forehead against his. I didn't plan for this to happen, she murmured. Neither did I, Thomas replied honestly, but I'm glad it did. In the weeks that followed, their relationship deepened rapidly. Harper became a fixture in Thomas and Emma's life, joining them for movie nights, helping Emma with her science project, bringing lunch to Thomas at job sites. She fit into their world with surprising ease, never showing any discomfort with their modest lifestyle. For his part, Thomas gradually grew accustomed to the aspects of Harper's life that had initially intimidated him. He met her colleagues at a charity event she'd invited him to, managing to hold his own in conversations about business and finance. He visited her penthouse more frequently, eventually feeling comfortable enough to fix her leaky kitchen faucet, despite her protests that she could call a plumber. Their different backgrounds created occasional awkward moments, like when Harper casually mentioned her private jet, or when Thomas worried about the bill at a restaurant she'd chosen, but they navigated these differences with honesty and humor. One evening, 2 months after the accident, they sat on Harper's balcony watching the sunset. Emma was inside, enthralled by Harper's extensive book collection. I have to go to London next week, Harper said, her fingers intertwined with Thomas's. Board meetings I can't miss. Thomas nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. How long will you be gone? A week, maybe 2. She hesitated, then added, I'd like you and Emma to come with me. Thomas stared at her in surprise. To London, Harper, I can't just leave my jobs and Emma has school. It would just be for the weekend, Friday to Sunday. She squeezed his hand. I know it's a lot to ask, but I want to show you my world the way you've shown me yours. Thomas considered it. The thought of flying across the ocean for a weekend seemed absurd from a practical standpoint, yet he found himself tempted by the opportunity to see Harper in her element. "Let me think about it," he said finally. Later that night, after putting Emma to bed at home, Thomas called Harper. "Yes," he said when she answered. "We'll come to London. Emma's never been overseas, and honestly, neither have I." Harper's delight was audible. "Really? That's wonderful. I promise you won't regret it." The trip to London was like stepping into another world. Harper's private jet made the journey comfortable even for Emma, who declared it the coolest thing ever when the flight attendant brought her hot chocolate with whipped cream. In London, they stayed at Harper's pied-à-terre, a beautiful townhouse in Kensington. Harper proved to be an enthusiastic tour guide, showing them the tourist highlights while also introducing them to her favorite hidden spots in the city. On Saturday evening, while Emma was happily exhausted and watching British television in their suite, Harper took Thomas to dinner at a small, exclusive restaurant tucked away on a cobblestone street. "This is where my father used to bring me as a child," she explained as they were seated at a corner table. "It's one of my favorite places in the world." Over dinner, Harper shared more of her background growing up as the only child of a brilliant but demanding father, losing her mother to cancer when she was 12, being groomed from an early age to take over the family business. "I never questioned it," she admitted, twirling pasta around her fork. "Following in my father's footsteps was just what I was supposed to do, and I'm good at it, genuinely, but lately I've been wondering if it's enough." "What would be enough?" Thomas asked gently. Harper looked up, her eyes meeting his. "This, what we have. You and Emma, you've shown me what life can be when it's filled with genuine connection instead of just ambition and achievement." Thomas reached across the table, taking her hand. "Harper, these past 2 months have been amazing. I never expected to feel this way about anyone again after Emma's mother left." "I love you, Thomas," Harper said suddenly, the words tumbling out as if she couldn't contain them any longer. "I know it hasn't been that long, but I love you, and I love Emma too." Thomas felt his heart swell with emotion. "I love you too, we both do." Later that night, walking hand in hand along the Thames, Harper stopped, turning to face Thomas. "I've been thinking," she said, her expression serious. "About us, about the future." Thomas felt a flutter of anxiety. Here it was the moment when reality would intrude, when their differences would prove too great to overcome. Instead, Harper surprised him. "I'm considering opening a regional office in our city. Permanently. I've already discussed it with the board. They think it's a good strategic move given our expansion into American markets." "You would move there permanently?" Thomas asked, hardly daring to hope. Harper nodded. "I want to build a life with you and Emma, if you'll have me. Not just dropping in for dinner a few times a week, but really being together." Thomas pulled her close, overcome with emotion. "Nothing would make me happier." Upon their return from London, Harper threw herself into establishing the new regional office, while Thomas continued his contracting work. Their relationship deepened, with Harper spending most nights at Thomas's apartment despite the cramped quarters. 3 months after their London trip, Harper invited Thomas and Emma to dinner at her penthouse. When they arrived, they found the dining room table set elegantly, with candles and flowers creating a festive atmosphere. "What's the occasion?" Thomas asked, accepting the glass of champagne Harper offered him. "I wanted to celebrate," Harper replied, handing Emma a flute of sparkling cider. "The regional office is officially open as of today." "That's wonderful," Thomas exclaimed, raising his glass. "To new beginnings." After dinner, Harper suggested they move to the living room for dessert. When they entered, Thomas stopped short. The coffee table held not only a chocolate cake, but also a small velvet box and what appeared to be legal documents. Emma spotted the cake first. "Chocolate, my favorite." Harper smiled nervously, looking at Thomas. "Before dessert, I have something to ask both of you." She picked up the velvet box, then to Thomas's surprise, knelt down in front of him. "Thomas Miller, I never expected that a car accident would change my life, but it did. It brought me to you and Emma, and you've shown me what true happiness feels like." She opened the box, revealing a simple but elegant platinum band. "Will you marry me?" Thomas stared at her in shock, then broke into a wide smile. "Yes," he said, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. "Yes, I'll marry you." Emma squealed with delight, jumping up and down. "Does this mean Harper will be my stepmom?" "If that's okay with you," Harper said, turning to Emma with uncertainty. Emma threw her arms around Harper's waist. "It's more than okay, it's the best thing ever." After their embrace, Harper gestured to the documents on the table. "There's one more thing. These are the deed to a house I found. It's not far from here, about 15 minutes from Emma's school. It has a yard, 4 bedrooms, and—" She looked at Thomas with a smile. "A workshop in the back for your projects." Thomas examined the papers with amazement. "Harper, this is too much." "It's not," she insisted. "It's our future home, if you like it. I wanted us to start our marriage in a place that belongs to both of us, that has room for all of us to grow." 6 months later, they were married in a simple ceremony in the backyard of their new home. Emma served as flower girl and best daughter, proudly walking down the aisle ahead of Harper, who looked radiant in a flowing ivory gown. As they exchanged vows, Thomas reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought them together, a random accident on a country road that had led to the greatest love of his life. At the reception, surrounded by friends from both their worlds, Harper's assistant clinked her glass for a toast. "To Thomas and Harper," she said, raising her champagne. "Proof that sometimes the most beautiful things come from the most unexpected beginnings." Harper squeezed Thomas's hand under the table, leaning close to whisper in his ear. "Thank you for pulling me from that wreckage. Not just the car, but the emptiness my life was before you." "Thank you for falling into my life," Thomas replied, kissing her softly, "in every sense of the word." As they danced under the stars in their backyard, with Emma occasionally cutting in to twirl between them, Thomas knew with absolute certainty that some accidents were truly meant to be.